Dr. Rhodes did send us one question, so I'll jumpstart it with his question. He is extremely interested in what the KSU students can do and what people in general can do. And so I want to hear first what your bioreactor for compost, but also your compost sort of production system, how you got into creating that, and sort of just some of the science behind it.
Okay. Well, it started out, I was a contractor for 30 years. I did commercial and residential construction, decided to go back to school in 2001, and got my undergraduate 2002, master's in 2004, and I got a job at the university. And the second day on the job, I was handed a project to do something good with dairy manure. And I started composting in the windrow method, just like everybody else. And my wife got tired of me coming in with dirty clothes from all the manures. And she says, we're going to do this a different way. So we both got together and we came up with a design eventually that it's a static composting process. It's not turned. So you don't disturb that microbial community or the fungal community once it develops its hyphae. It's about 70% moisture content. We irrigate it once a day. That is ideal for fungal growth. And we also add worms to it after the thermophilic phase. And it also has tubes up the center, and it sits on a pallet so air can flow under the pallet and up through the tubes to be never more than 6 to 8 inches from ambient air. So you're always aerobic everywhere in the pile. And that seems to, from what we observed in the research, looking at how the community, the microbial community developed, we saw a 4 times increase in the diversity of the bacterial community, and we saw a lot of fungal spores as the end product in this. We first started out at about 400 pounds per acre in our trials just to see what it did, but now we are down to 2 pounds per acre. And we're making an extract out of it, injecting it into the furrow when you plant. In this last season, we saw 2 pounds of microbes placed in the soil with the seed produce about 120 to 140 pounds of nitrogen for a corn crop. We are able to match the productivity of 256 pounds of nitrogen per acre in the conventional approach, with only 15% of that nitrogen, about 37 pounds, and 2 pounds of biology. So we fully expected to take a big hit. This was our first year on that plot, but actually the farmer was more profitable. He grew just as much corn, but he had less cost, and he was $80 more profitable per acre. So this goes at any scale, is the nice thing about it. And the bioreactor only makes about 700 pounds of finished product, but that can be applied, as I say, at 2 pounds per acre. So that one bioreactor can do about 350 acres.
Wow. And I had a question about the compost and sort of how you create that. What I saw I watched the video of your construction as well,
Okay.
of the bioreactor, and I saw mostly brown matter. Do you use any like food waste or green matter in there at all?
Well, if you're going to use food waste, you need to either dry them or batch them with more rough material,
Okay.
because food waste will pack and they'll go anaerobic on you. And you're trying to avoid that anaerobic, because that kind of stops the process.
Yeah, and that's what I thought was sort of the reason for excluding it. I just wanted to sort of see if it was even something you could do, but I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I started out with dairy manure, and the big issue with dairy manure was salinity. And the people that had this project a decade before me, the finished compost they got through the windrow composting process was just as saline or more than what the dairy manure was when they started. What we observed in this is reduction in the salinity, as this from about 33 to 34 millisiemens conductivity down to less than 3.
And how does I'm sorry, you keep going.
So the salinity.
I was going to ask, how does that affect the soil and how it, it helps crops produce?
that plants can't grow. Most of them don't like anything over 10. And a few of them don't like anything over 3. So it was a factor of 10 times higher than what a sensitive plant would exhibit. And they concluded that adding compost to soils was bad for soils.
Got
So,
it.
and, I understand, if you're putting salt on the soil, yes, you're not going to see good plant growth.
Yeah.
But this process, we saw reduction in salinity through the process.
And so how does the compost get applied? It seemed from what I saw was that you apply it to the seeds and not so much like a layer of compost.
Well, yeah, you need to, this is a different compost. It's not a nutrient amendment. As I said, we started at 400 pounds per acre, not knowing any better. And we only applied once. And we were seeing year after year improvement in the ability to grow a crop. Let's see, I lost my train of thought. What was the question?
Oh, just on how the oh my gosh, I can't even remember the question now. Haley, do you remember the question I asked?
Oh, the efficacy of it?
How it's applied.
Oh, how it's applied. That's right. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
She keeps me on track. Trust me. Yeah, we started out at just ground spreading and irrigating it in. You can coat the seed. We found the most effective way, though, is to, when you plant the seed, spray it into the furrow so you get seed and soil and extract. They all are touching each other. So having the biology there when that seed germinates seems to be key. I see over double the growth having it injected in as an extract as compared to spraying it on the soil and watered in. So and I don't see much difference between a 2 to 20 pound per acre rate. It doesn't make any difference just to get enough biology there, and the 2 pounds per acre rate will put about 83 million bacteria and 10 million fungal spores per square foot. That's what we've calibrated out. So yeah, it's a significant amount. The compost has a lot of biodiversity in it as well.
And so does any of that have trouble like in a certain soil type versus another?
I've worked in desert sandy soils. I've worked in heavy clay soils. Most of my work has been here in the desert Southwest. So I'm not sure. We know people in Montana that have used this, that have seen increased yields in their crops. We're starting to get more and more information back from other people that they're very pleased with what they're seeing. So, we're kind of in that phase between field trials to the university trials going into full-scale field trials right now. But we're seeing good responses in corn. I've seen it in cotton. I've seen it in chili. But we don't know everything yet on it, which is
right.
It's why we're just still doing the research. And it's good to see y'all have an interest in this direction, because this is your future. There's some big issues here on this planet. Half of the people on this planet depend on synthetic nitrogen. And the social cost of the application of that synthetic nitrogen is 3 times what the profit is on the corn that they grow with it.
Wow.
Yes, it's something that we can't continue.
Yeah.
And for your future health and for the future health of this planet, this is the direction we need to go. We need to be moving away from all the synthetic fertilizers and start restoring or regenerating that biology, like you're studying.
Yeah. And is there any plant type that you wouldn't use it with, or is it just applicable with all of them? I mean, I wouldn't expect it.
What we're seeing is what we're offering when we make this compost is a roster of participants, kind of like a baseball team. And nature won't choose all of them. I've noticed when we do metagenomic analysis to see, which ones come to the forefront and which ones kind of fade away. It's different for each, different condition, different soil, different environment. But having that roster to choose from seems to be key in kickstarting the system. So I think, there's a lot we need to learn on this, but we're just mimicking nature. We're mimicking what evolved on the Great Plains and all the grazing animals, the way they grazed. You saw what was said on that. So it's the best we can to mimic nature and observe what we do and how it affects the food we grow and the environment.
And that was going to be one of my questions, was the scaling of the bioreactor and sort of its production levels. I wasn't sure, what that was going to look like until I started to actually look at it and was seeing that, this is something you can scale. And seeing that you had worked with Gabe Brown was super interesting to us, because we had read his book that he wrote, his journey through regenerative agriculture. We read that book last semester as well, which was a great book. And I've watched his presentation at some convention that I cannot think of, but it was an hour long of him talking.
He's great.
He's great.
I love to watch Gabe.
But so I just thought it was super interesting that you had done some work with him and seeing that it was applied, to somebody who is a part of, regenerative agriculture and sustainable agriculture, and sort of showing so much information through his book that you were able to show even more information through the research and being able to apply it on his farm. His farm just stands out to me as such a great farm. But I am interested if I hear a lot of great benefits and stuff of what it can do, but what are sort of the limitations, and when does it sort of get to a point where it's no longer productive in terms of the compost system itself?
Well, applying it at the 2 pound per acre rate, right now we think we have to apply it every time until we get these soils built up, until we get the carbon back into the soil. That carbon is essential. It's the energy resource for this microbial community. And it's the cycling of that carbon that makes these systems work. But getting the biology back is the other part of it. The biology, without the influence of the plants and the carbon flow and that energy, it's not a magic button. It takes a full system for this to work. You need to be concerned about your soil microbiome, the plants you grow, the insects, they are part of this as well. Grazing animals are essential, and Gabe is the specialist in that field as far as implementing grazing to bring these soils back. Not everybody can bring cows in. The compost is to offer that impact of grazing animals by bringing that biology back, by that big inoculation event that as those herds of bison went across the prairie, it was just a big inoculation event of microbes. So we're still learning a lot, but it does seem to be able to work, and you can scale it up. We had a group in Colorado that did a 40 by 30 bioreactor, and it's still a work in progress, but their compost looked pretty good. We'll be doing an analysis on it, both metagenome and metatranscriptome here pretty quick, looking to see how similar it is to what we're doing. And we're comparing compost made in New York and Texas, North Dakota, and California and New Mexico, looking at 10 different composts made all over the U.S. to see what the similarity is. So stay tuned on that.
Yeah, I do look forward to that. And so what is the future of your research? I mean, I know you're saying that sort of is the future, but what is your research in particular looking at, or was that your research?
Well, we need to be looking at scaled up projects, and that's what we've just started on this last summer.
Okay.
Get like a 60-acre trial or larger. And to answer the questions, well, does it work in every environment? Does it work in every plant type? The questions you just asked, that's still the unknown. It seems to be very effective in just about all plants that we've tried so far. So again, though, the research is still needing to be done.
Yeah. And uh, what sort of things can people do if they don't necessarily? Because one of the aspects of our project is working with small spaces and having a small scale garden at home. And so I live in an apartment. I don't have enough space to build a big reactor, but say I wanted to produce, compost like yours, maybe for my own garden, just on a smaller scale. How would somebody go about maybe doing that, or how would just KSU students or anybody in general be able to have an impact?
Well, you can build any size bioreactor as long as you keep those, the 70% moisture, aerobic, not turned, and employ the worms in it. Everybody can do this at any scale. I just picked this scale because it's something that can be moved around with a forklift. It could be processed in a common location and then just moved and set to mature. You can set a whole system up that could process the material, run it through a bath, drop it into a bioreactor, and then just go set the bioreactor. It's great for the home gardener. You will never have better compost than this. And just about every grandmother we've ever talked to, every son of or grandson has said, well, my grandmother had a compost pile in the back and she was able to grow great food. So that's kind of a key that people have done this for a century.
Yeah.
It's just going out and doing it. And
I know.
It makes such a difference in the growth of the plant. You can grow straight into it. We got 60 pounds of tomatoes off of one plant 1 year just using the compost straight. So it's amazing what you can do with it.
Yeah, that's extremely impressive. Yeah. And
my wife is saying that you can make a 2-foot diameter one if you want. And just put one pipe in the middle. So experiment.
Yeah. No, I definitely am now really interested to build my own and figure the best system for it. So now I'm going to get creative. I'm not necessarily the most creative person, but I could try to be.
Well, that's how we learn.
Yeah.
That's how we figured it out. So
it blows my mind that what you said, this has been the way that things have worked for, years and years, but we just haven't done it that way. So it just blows my mind that yeah, you're right. I mean, this is the way that nature has worked forever, and yet it's not the way we do things. And so
you asked about the potential, though, I think, for how it could change our environment. And this is the only mechanism I see that it gives us a practical, economical, and easy to accomplish method for the future. It's all about getting that carbon back into the soil. That's where our benefits for the plant growth go, but that benefits our atmosphere as far as reducing atmospheric CO2. And as we build these soils up, the more and more you bring that biology back, the better the plants grow. The more carbon that's pushed into the soil as a functional carbon, not just as an amorphous carbon, but a functional carbon, a microbial community that's further able to extract the elemental nutrients or fix nitrogen from the atmosphere for that plant to grow even better. And it just starts stacking on each other. And we also notice a improvement in carbon use efficiency of this system. Most scientists are going to say the more carbon you have in the soil, the more microbes you have in the soil, the more respiration you're going to have. In a healthy, microbial, diverse system, that is not how it is. You start to see a plateauing of that respiration. So you get better and better carbon use efficiency in the soil. Again, helping you to store more carbon in the soil, feed more microbes, help support that plant growth. We see a 5 times increase in the ability to grow a plant on this planet from what we have right now. It wouldn't take but a doubling to take care of all atmospheric CO2 that we emit.
Wow, that's impressive numbers for sure. And so speaking economically, what does it take to implement this? What would it take on a commercial scale?
For a farmer, it costs from 25 to 50 cents an acre.
Right. seems like it would make absolute sense that.
It's probably the best insurance a farmer could buy. I mean, they just kind of look at you and say, "Are you crazy?" But then, they see that corn trial that we did. They thought, "Whoa, I can cut my input cost considerably here."
Right. Because
And
then
still,
I don't know the numbers on buying fertilizers, but I would assume that it's, in the thousands that they probably spend within a year. But
oh yeah, it's about $150 to $160 an acre.
got it. Okay.
It,
Yeah.
yeah, and it adds up in a hurry.
A
You
lot.
start talking 10,000 acres. We
Yeah.
sat at a table on a no-till conference, and at that table there were 7 farmers. There was how many $1 million? There's $1 million worth of fertilizer purchased at that table.
Gosh, that's
Just,
crazy. Wow.
just 7 farmers. And they're applying at 1/3 the recommended rate. Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yes. That's what we're contending with in ag, though.
Yeah.
And these guys are only making cents per acre. It's such a tight margin. That's why it's so easy for them to go broke. But they have nothing else. They have to have that nitrogen because these soils are so broken. It's the new abnormal, is what it is.
Right. It's the new normal. You got to try and figure out how to navigate around it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is, wow, definitely food for thought and definitely makes you think. But well, I guess my last thing that I would just ask from you is just to send us home with a good takeaway. This is my favorite question to ask people at the end of our interviews we do. So I just like to see what would be the one thing that you would emphasize that people know about anything that we've talked about so far, or just anything under sort of the umbrella of sustainable agriculture, but that you really would be like, a lot of people don't know this and I want people to know this.
I think probably the biggest thing is we don't see soils as a living organism. And to view them as an inorganic substrate just to hold nutrients to grow a plant, this is not how nature developed this planet. Everything on this planet comes from the microbes and how they evolved on this planet. And all the changes everything that we enjoy today is because of the microbial community that pollinated this planet and made all these changes and made it from a cold, barren rock in space to a very hospitable climate with all this diversity. But realizing how important the microbial community is in that soil, as well as in your own self, how you depend on the functionality and the diversity and the health of your stomach microbiome. It's the same thing in the soil. And the more we can do to support that life, it will support us in turn.
Yeah, I like that. And I really like saying that, seeing soil as an organism, seeing it as more than just soil or dirt, or something like that, and seeing it as much more than that, because it really is.
That's just like a teaspoon of soil outnumbers all the people on this planet.
Oh yeah, that I know. On one of the videos, there was a graphic that was showing like the numbers in comparison to a human body, and it was like a tenth, and so it was just like a portion of the leg, and I was like, wow, that really shows you things.
Yeah, but
if you compare that to the size of like a child, I mean, thinking that a whole child compared to that being microorganisms and then the genes that they have with it, exactly, yeah. And I thought, and I don't remember the term that it was, but where the genes could express themselves as a result of being together with so many other ones was so interesting to me, and they were able to do genes that weren't previously able to.
Yeah, that's how life evolved on this planet. That multicellular life didn't come in till way later. And it was that grouping and the ability of these cells to function as a quasi-organelle, to do things as a community that they couldn't as an individual. I mean, that's just another step through that evolutionary chain of getting to what we see in our body with all this specialization and all the tissues. That's how we evolved this way, is that quorum sensing.
Right. Yeah. I feel like one of the things you said was like seeing soil as a society in one of the lectures, and it was really a great way of sort of putting the way that soil works and the organisms in the soil work all
You
together
know,
to be so
where do you think
cohesive.
we learned it from?
It goes so great. I mean, my major is sociology, so I mean, I've studied society well enough to the point where it's interesting to see it flipped on its head in a soil aspect, and
Yeah.
sort of looking
Yeah.
at a micro society.
Of course, as a microbiologist, the way I look at it is, plants were artificial intelligence experiment number one for the microbes. Didn't have quite the mobility they wanted, so they were number two. And somewhere we went awry.
Well, this was really enjoyable. Let me stop the recording real quick. Okay.